And our next speaker will be somebody who will explain us what we can actually do to make the shift going international or be a European company, what we have actually to be aware of. I welcome from Cologne to Cologne, he's sitting actually in Cologne too, if I'm right, Florian Merkel, co-founder of KPMG Venture Services. Greetings.
Hi, Thomas. Good to see you.
Hi. How's everything doing there in Cologne?
Yeah, it's pretty fine over here at Barbarossa-Platz. I'm in the crowd listening to some of the famous Cologne carnival music. They know that there's a special song about Barbarossa-Platz, but working at Barbarossa-Platz sometimes makes it necessary not to shift to your amazing studio, Thomas. Unfortunately, COVID regulations at KPMG keep me away from entering your studio. On the one hand side, I agree that we should be careful also in those days. But on the other hand side, yeah, it's really a pity not to be with you in the studio. And it's even a bigger pity not to be on Pirate Summit.
You are one of the guys being around in the NRW startup ecosystem since I can remember, actually. You have been around wherever I went. You have been on Pirate Summit, a lot of events at Startplatz, at other locations. You have been covering a lot of the last 5 to 10 years here in the startup ecosystem. And what do you think, from your perspective, how have we done in the last 10 years?
The last 10 years is a little bit too much for myself. I started in 2013. That's the year when we, on the one hand side, found venture services at KPMG, and we also had our coming out, of course, at Pirate Summit. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so happy to be with you and be with everybody here in this chat today. I actually think that NRW is doing very well when it comes to going abroad. And the reason why I can affirm this is that we've seen a lot of the startups here in Cologne and in NRW that did start in 2013, 14, 15. And a lot of them, they are doing either business abroad, or they have investors abroad, or they have even been sold to exit partners abroad. And so I think going international is quite a good story that we can tell from within NRW.
Absolutely. And maybe explain a little bit more what KPMG Venture Services is actually doing.
Yes, of course, I'd be happy to. So what are we doing? The first thing that we learned in 2013 is one of the Pirate Summit house rules, and that's give, ask. So at the very beginning, we did a lot of startup education. We did some workshops. We did knowledge sharing. And why did we do that? Well, at KPMG, we've been doing deals and stuff like that for decades. And there's very well a portion of knowledge at KPMG that also could be favorable for startups, for entrepreneurs at a very early stage. And this is why we, for example, in 2013 also started our open door session at Startplatz. We did masterclasses at Pirate Summit. And well, to be honest, one of the main reasons why we're all, of course, doing this give is that at a certain point in time, we're also happy to ask for, well, do you want to work with us together? And when this kicks in, then of course the standard KPMG counseling services come in effect, and we can accompany startups, entrepreneurs on their journey to success. And I'm very happy to tell everybody here that we've seen a lot of success stories, and that in some cases we were able to give a positive impact on those success stories. And so, yeah, this is what we're doing at Venture Services. We're giving a lot to the ecosystem, and in advance, in return, we're also happy to benefit from transactions that are coming out of the ecosystem here in NRW.
Yeah, absolutely. As you might have heard in the, I don't know if you had enough time to actually check out what we have done today in the last 2 hours. It was a lot of journalists talking about great stories. We love stories. Stories is what feeds us and why we actually do this. This is the why of why we do this. And we want to hear great or interesting and not always successful stories about startups. So in the topic of going international, please deliver. What is a great startup? What is a great story of a startup going international from NRW?
Well, we have some startups in NRW that at a very early stage encountered that some of their potential investors are abroad, and some of them are even so far abroad that they're in the US. And I mean, probably a lot of our audience know that investments and the whole process, the amounts, the storytelling is from a cultural perspective quite different in the US than it is here in Europe, or maybe even especially in Germany. And so on the one hand side, there's really a big cultural effort that some of the NRW startups have done to go into the US market and to actually try to raise funds there. And then there are several other additional hurdles that come across your way when you're traveling through the US and trying to raise funds. And this is the situation that in the last couple of years, a lot of even the bigger US funds, they still were at the approach not to invest in any European legal entity. They were like, well, we're US investors, we want to invest in a US entity. And so either you have this US entity or you're not interesting for us. And so we've seen quite some US flips. And this is a topic that has to be well structured, well designed. And in a few cases, we could be of assistance. But also, if you're just going across borders within Europe and you're just trying to approach the market in the Netherlands or the market in France, or as long as UK has been within the European Union, maybe even in UK, there are also a lot of topics that you have to be aware of. The last story that I'm happy to tell is that a quite successful startup here in NRW, they're doing business in Sweden. And Sweden is one of the very first states within the EU. They actually enacted a digital services tax. And so if you're just doing software as a service, something like that, something that is not a typical delivery or whatever business, not a B2C business, it's a B2B business, and it's purely digital, and still you have regulatory duties to be aligned with in Sweden. And so these are probably two aspects that I would like to point out. On the one hand side, there's always this cultural aspect. You're going to a different country, and even within Europe, countries are different and culture is different. On the other hand side, you also have to be aligned with a lot of regulatory issues. You have to make sure that you're doing fine with the laws and stuff at the respective country you're doing business with. And when you're going fundraising abroad, then it's even more interesting, especially when you're also thinking about how is the money coming back to your startup doing the operations in Germany. So we've seen great success stories here, but we also know that it's quite a hustle for the founders, for the entrepreneurs, to get both the cultural aspect and the regulatory aspect within their startup going.
And can you say a name of a startup?
Okay, this is always quite hard for me because I have to remain confident towards our clients. And so if you Google some of the latest NRW transactions, and you might see someone that has been acquired from a US company, this might be something where we could have been involved. And actually, one of our bigger deals is currently going on. So this is another reason why I can't talk about that. But hopefully within the next 2 or 3 weeks, there will be another really nice success story where we could contribute from a KPMG perspective.
Yeah, I apologize. I had to ask. It's my job to ask. If I wouldn't have asked, I just would have done my job correct. I'm sorry.
No. Good job asking, and I'm sorry for the answer.
It's all right. It's fine. We knew the answer. I had to ask. It's everything fine. The one way is one thing. I work in NRW with my startup, and I want to go international. But we probably have also startups listening from all over the world, asking themselves, how can I get into NRW, because NRW is the ecosystem where the most people live actually in Europe. So it's very attractive to actually settle in North Rhine-Westphalia. And what do you think is important to know when somebody wants to come to North Rhine-Westphalia with their product?
Yeah, I think again, there's one big issue, and that's the cultural issue. In North Rhine-Westphalia, we have a lot of small, medium-sized enterprises, and a lot of them are also run by their respective owners. And there's a huge difference between talking to the owner that has the responsibility for this third or maybe fourth generation family business, than talking to a CEO of a stock exchange entity. So this cultural difference has to be well understood by startups and entrepreneurs coming from abroad to NRW, because around here it's quite frequent to talk to someone who is in this family business situation, instead to talking to someone with a stock exchange blue chip. And so be aware of those very special needs and restrictions that those companies have. They've been successful over decades, and this is why they want to make sure that their success is going on if they're, for example, buying your product or entering into a cooperation with you. So this is really important to give them confidence. That's a cultural aspect I would really point out to. The second aspect, again, and this is always the same, going inbound or outbound, you have to comply with the regulatory framework in Germany. There's not that big of a difference from the regulatory framework from Munich, Hamburg, Berlin, or Cologne, but still there is this regulatory framework, and the reason there is this framework, and this is the reason why I would usually point out that there's a good chance, if you really want to make bigger business around here, maybe have a subsidiary in Germany. Because if you're having this subsidiary over here, it's way easier to comply with those regulations, because then it's a subsidiary that has to comply with regulations. If you're remaining with your, let's say, your Dutch BV, then all the regulations that apply in Germany have to be met by your Dutch BV, and this might be even more complex than if you're having a German UG Haftungsbeschränkt being your subsidiary, and this entity can then be compliant with German regulations. However, if you're doing business in Germany, you should also be aware of stuff like withholding tax. And I had this really interesting small and very early stage startup, and they're basically having a platform for content, and they're receiving content from content providers all over the world. And due to the fact that they're paying royalty fees to those contributors, there's a withholding tax issue in Germany. And so also, if you're giving away software as a service or stuff like that, this might lead to the fact that your German customer has to withhold, for example, taxes from the payments to you. And then you want to make sure that you're not being double taxed in Germany and in your respective place of business. And so these are some aspects you have to evaluate. What are you doing in Germany? Is it delivering stuff, or is it providing a service? And also be aware of, do you have feet on the ground? So do you have people around here? Are you sending people over here? What are those people doing over here? So maybe these are a few of the aspects that you should keep in mind. And if you find answers to those questions, then you're basically in a quite good setup.
Awesome. Florian, we are already at the end of the call. Thank you very much for joining us here, even if it's remotely. Thank you very much, Florian. Florian Merkel, co-founder at KPMG Venture Services. Thank you.